Okay, this is your demo on pastry cream. So I am going to start with my pot. I have my milk. Put that in. I'm going to take half of my sugar that I have here, and I'm going to add that to my milk. Just give this a quick stir. Just so that sugar is not sitting on the bottom. And I am substituting vanilla extract for the vanilla bean. So if you're using vanilla bean, you would need to put it in at this stage so that all of that flavor can get extracted from the bean while this is cooking. But since I'm using vanilla extract, I'm actually going to put that at the end with the butter. So I'm looking for this to come up to a boil. So while that is heating up, I'm going to have my remaining sugar and my cornstarch. So I like to use the sugar as a sort of carrier for the cornstarch. So just like if you were adding cornstarch to some sort of broth or filling to thicken that, we would always mix that with some sort of liquid so that that doesn't form clumps. So I want to have the same thing happen here. I'm just using the sugar as that carrier instead of another liquid. Give this another stir. So pastry cream is a really great, just basic custard. It pretty much is like a really rich pudding. It can be manipulated with all kinds of flavors. So we're making a vanilla flavor, but I could infuse all sorts of things in this milk here. If I wanted to have cinnamon sticks or tea or dried lavender, this is a great place where we can steep those flavors, and the heat from this is going to draw those flavors out. There's also other things that we can add at the end and use the heat from the finished custard, like chocolate or peanut butter, things that I would just use the heat to melt those things in. So I'm going to give just a quick whisk to these egg yolks. It is important that if you are using eggs from the grocery store, they are typically smaller than what we would be able to get commercially in the kitchen. So you need to make sure that if the recipe asks for a weight of egg yolks, you are going by weight, not by count. Otherwise, you wouldn't have enough yolks in this recipe. So I am going to add in my sugar cornstarch mixture. And remember that sugar is hygroscopic, so it wants to draw moisture out of whatever it is touching. So you need to make sure that as soon as the sugar and the cornstarch come into contact with each other, that you are immediately getting those mixed together. Otherwise you get these sort of little dried bits of egg yolks that won't ever whisk out. They're basically dehydrated yolks. So just getting that whisked smooth, that's all we have to do. So my milk has just come to a boil, so go ahead and turn that off. Now what I'm gonna do is tempering the eggs. So if I added these yolks directly to my milk, it would just scramble them. So I want to gradually bring up the temperature of these yolks, and that process is called tempering. So I'm going to add just small increments of my milk, just a little bit at a time. And this also is going to lighten that egg yolk mixture, getting it closer to the consistency of the milk. It's quite stiff with just the yolks and the sugar and the cornstarch. Add another addition. And the nice thing is I have this in a metal bowl, so I can actually feel the side of the bowl and see how warm that is feeling. It's quite hot right now. Just as a rule of thumb, I like to always add about 75% of my hot milk mixture into my, whether it's whole eggs or egg yolks, just to make sure that I have enough heat in here before I add these back. So these are quite hot now. Just touching the side of the bowl is very warm. I'm gonna put this back on my burner. Set aside my spatula for now. My egg yolks are gonna go in. And now I wanna have my heat on about medium to medium high. And I'm whisking this entire time. I need to get this mixture thickened all at the same time. So if I don't whisk continuously, I'm gonna have hot spots right on the bottom of the pot. So not only is this gonna thicken from the coagulation of the eggs, it is a custard, but also the cornstarch is gonna be thickening as well. So initially, while I'm whisking, I am seeing this sort of foam layer happen on top because my mixture is very liquidy, so it's able to aerate just because I'm stirring with a whisk. Always with a whisk, never with the spatula. The whisk is much more efficient at sort of grabbing this mixture and keeping it smooth. So what you want to watch out for is it thickening not evenly. So I can see it's starting to thicken on the bottom. It's sort of leaving tracks as I'm stirring. If you start to see lumps form, what you want to do is take it off the heat, whisk it until it's completely smooth, and then put it back on. If you let this get lumpy and then you just keep cooking it all the way, you'll never get it beautifully smooth. So, and those lumps forming could mean two things. One, either your heat is too high or you're not whisking rapidly enough. So I'm really using that whisk to get into the corners and scrape the bottom. What I want to watch for now, so I have a nice thickness here, is I want to watch for bubbles. Almost. So you do have to pause in your whisking occasionally because you're moving this so vigorously. It would be hard to see the bubbles to know that this is boiling. There's one. Okay, so now I'm going to boil this for about 1 minute. So I'm going to go ahead and just set a timer for myself. So this, what's happening is we are letting the cornstarch thicken to its maximum capability. Also, we are cooking out the flavor of the starch. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. Staying nice and smooth, keeping that moving. I don't see any lumps forming. And it is actually still boiling. When I pause, I do see those sort of big poofs coming up because this is so thick. It's not a traditional boil like a liquid that would be a rolling boil. Okay, so now I'm just gonna do a quick taste to make sure that my starch is cooked out. Be careful, it is quite hot, it was boiling. That tastes great. Good, good. All right, so now I'm gonna strain this just for a little insurance. So I just have a small strainer and a clean bowl. This is not the bowl that I had my egg yolks and sugar that I was whisking because that was raw eggs. I would not want to put my now cooked food safe custard back in that bowl. So a perfectly made custard or pastry cream wouldn't have any lumps in it at all, no little bits of cooked egg, but that is difficult to do, especially as you are getting used to making stirred custards or stovetop custards. So the straining just gives you that little bit of assurance that you know that every single bit of this is velvety smooth. So I'm just going to press that through. All the way through. Make sure I get everything off the spatula. And then just come and catch the back side so that make sure I got all of that goodness in there. So this stage right now would also catch, if you were using vanilla bean, it would catch that bean at this stage. So now that I've strained, I'm going to add my butter that I have just cubed up so that that will incorporate a little faster instead of me having just a big chunk of butter. So once I'm at this stage, I don't want to be whisking and I'm not stirring wildly either. That can actually break down the pastry cream a little bit and make it runny, which is not what we want. We want something nice and firm. When this sets, it will actually be a consistency that when it's chilled, you can slice it and it doesn't seep out everywhere. So that is our end goal. And the butter actually helps with the set as well. It gives it a really nice shine to the finished pastry cream. And then since we always store pastry cream in the refrigerator, it is a custard. Since butter is solid when it's cold, it will help with the set of this as well. Now that my butter is incorporated, I'm going to add my vanilla extract. So I am making a half recipe here. The original recipe called for 1 bean. So if I cut that in half, that's a half of a bean. I am substituting, instead of using a half of a bean, I'm using 1 tablespoon of extract. And of course you could add any other extract in here. You could put in orange or almond, coffee, pretty much anything that you would like to be able to flavor the pastry cream. Once your extract is incorporated, if I wanted to make, for example, chocolate pastry cream or peanut butter pastry cream, while this is still very hot is when I would add those items in. So I would just let the heat of the pastry cream melt that peanut butter so I could stir it in, melt my chocolate so that that can be stirred in as well. Okay, so now my vanilla is fully incorporated. What I want to do now is get this chilled as fast as possible. So the shelf life on pastry cream is only 3 to 5 days, and the faster you get it from this hot temperature that we're at down to 40 or 41 degrees, the closer you'll have to that 5-day shelf life. So you want to put this on an ice bath, stir it often so that that heat can constantly get redistributed and it cools down much faster. Pastry cream will get a skin on the surface, so it's important that anytime you're not actively stirring this, you want to have plastic wrap directly on the surface of the pastry cream. That will keep a skin from forming. So I'm gonna ice mine down, and then once it's cool, it will be ready for filling our profiteroles and eclairs.